Okay, now that we've talked about pre-processing functions, let's go ahead and go back and talk about adding an external style sheet whenever our theme function or template file is called that adds our strike-through styling. Go ahead and go back to your module list and open up the 8th step, which is adding CSS. Go ahead and copy all the code and paste it over all of the code in your lookandfeel.module file and save it. Okay, the only difference between this and the previous file is that we've added the inclusion of 2 CSS style sheets. And we've added 2 not out of necessity, but to make it easier to track when we're adding a style sheet through our theme function and when we're doing so for our template file. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at these 2 implementations. I'm going to scroll up here to our theme look and feel strike function. So this is our theme function that we implemented. There are 2 differences here. First, we have a new line, and I'll come back to this in just a sec. And next, we're returning a little bit different HTML here. So before we had a strike tag, but we also had some additional tags for styling with inline styles. But instead, what we've done is added a class to our strike tag, and then we're going to apply the styles to that. So we're simplifying the code. This is always a good idea when it comes to theming. And if we step up here, we have a Drupal add CSS function. What Drupal add CSS does is allow us to register CSS files to be added, and then the page.tpl.php file, the page template file, takes care of pulling in that CSS into the HTML. So what we're doing is using a function called Drupal get path, which allows us to get a path to either a module or a theme. In this case, we want to get the path to our current module, our look and feel module. So as the first parameter, we pass it module instead of theme. And then as the second parameter, we pass it the name of the module. Next, we're adding the location of the CSS file that we want to add. So this one is lookandfeel-strike.css. Let's go ahead and open up that file and take a look at what's inside. Jump to your module directory, and we're going to look for lookandfeel-strike.css. I'm going to go ahead and open it with Komodo. And this is very simple. We're just adding a background of green, a font style of italic, a color of white. So we'll know that this is working if our background for our strike tag is green. I'm going to jump back to our lookandfeel.module file. Okay, our next step is to add a CSS file when our template file is called. So whereas with a theme function, it's pretty straightforward adding our CSS, we can do it directly in the theme function. With a template file, we wouldn't want to put the CSS file directly in the template file. So we need an alternate way to do this. And this is exactly why we talked about pre-processing functions first. Because pre-processing functions get called before the template gets called and processes logic, that's a good place to put any CSS files that we need added. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the file here, you'll see we have a function called template preprocess look and feel strike to. This is the naming convention that's used when you're adding a pre-processing function to a module that also defines the theme function for which we're pre-processing. So in this module, we're defining strike and strike to, or rather look and feel strike to. And so if we're going to establish that initial pre-processing function, we would do so by adding template underscore preprocess underscore to the name of either the theming function or the template file. And then we're passing it the variables array, just like we would with any pre-processing function. In here, we're running a Drupal add CSS, and it's the same structure as our last Drupal add CSS, and we're just adding a different file here, lookandfeel-strike2.css. Now let's go ahead and open that file by jumping to our module directory and opening up lookandfeel-strike2. Okay, the only difference between this and our previous CSS file is that the background is blue. So we'll know that this is working when we have a blue background in our strike tag. Let's go ahead and jump back to the browser and make sure that you've saved the module file. And what we're going to do is go ahead and flush all caches because we need to register this new pre-processing function. Scroll down to the bottom, and sure enough, our strike through is blue, so it's working. To quickly recap what we've talked about so far, we've discussed how to invoke an existing theme function. We've talked about how to create our own theme function and our own template file, and how to add CSS to each one of those. And we've talked about pre-processing functions, which allow us to modify the variables and data that get passed to those functions or files.